Hey, happy Monday, everybody. I am Stacy. I'm the owner and artist of New Creations by Stacy. So as you guys are jumping on, just say hey, where you're watching from. So tonight, I was actually supposed to be out of town if you saw me live on Friday on my page. But so we were going to work on something small tonight, but I did have a little change of plans. Having some knee issues, so we are actually going to continue on with the project we were working on Friday night. So like I said, as you guys are jumping on, just say hey, where you're watching from. I see a few people. Dixie, Belle should also be hopping on here in a minute to help answer any questions or comments or anything like that. Hey, Wanda, just to help answer any questions. And then also, just really quick before we get started, in the description, I do have a full product list that we're going to be using tonight, or that I have used. I went ahead and put the paint colors on here. So I've got a full product list. I also have the link to my page so you can see how everything turns out. If you guys do watch me, I've got a bunch of things I need to stage, but I haven't been able to move around a lot, so hopefully they will be coming this week. So we've got that in place. And then I also do have the affiliate link. And you can either find your local retailer there if you wanted to get any of the products. And you can also order online if you don't have anybody local. And then the last thing is the Chalk Mineral Paint Enthusiast group. If you don't already, if you're not already in that group, definitely join. Awesome artists, lots of inspiration there of all kinds of different things that you can do, even including art stuff with Dixie Belle. Hey, Thelma. Hey, Faith. All right, so tonight, you guys, I think I'm going to go ahead. Here's another thing. Sorry, my knee has just me all off, and I forgot to actually fill in the holes here. We were going to start with some blending, but I just realized, hey, Philippa, good morning. So I just realized I need to go ahead and fill those in. But, so we're just going to do some blending on this bottom section down here so I can catch it up. These posts over here are done because we're going to, depending on how much time we have, we're going to be doing some stripes as well as using some Gilding Wax and some Moonshine Metallics. So here we go. We'll just go ahead and get started. I feel like I'm forgetting to tell you guys something. And I'm so sorry. I'm a little slow with moving around, so just bear with me. Oh, hey, I see Dixie Belle on too. So like I said, we're just going to blend this section right quick. I did do a little tiny bit of painting on this on Friday, just the first coat. So now we're just going to go ahead and do the second one, which will be the last one we do. And I'm not looking for really a perfect blend on this, just because I intend to, like I said, I'm going to be adding some stripes. We're going to do the Moonshine Metallics, a few different things with it tonight. May end up using some of this script on here. I'm kind of up in the air, and I was trying to keep it neutral, but I just can never do that. It never works out for me. So let's go ahead and get started. These two columns I don't have done, so depending on how time's going, we might do those as well. I think probably you guys have a pretty good view where you're at, so I'm going to leave you there, and then I'll bring you in once we do some of the detail work. But again, we're going to be using Sawmill Gravy, which is kind of like just an off-white color, slightly kind of maybe a tiny grayish undertone. But you can kind of see how that looks. That's the Sawmill Gravy. And then we're also going to be using French linen. Oh yeah, I think I know what I'm forgetting. I forgot to tell you guys who I was. I'm an elite Dixie Belle retailer here in Ardmore, Alabama at the Rustic Willow. So if you guys are local here, please definitely pop in. Would love to see you. So this is the French linen, so it's just slightly darker. And these colors are super easy to blend. I've got something in this Sawmill Gravy. But these colors are super easy to blend because they're so close to each other in tone. So we are going to go ahead, since we're doing a large area, well, I would have actually liked to use my oval large, but that would require me to move. So we're going to use oval smalls. We're going to be blending, so we're going to be using the Dixie Belle synthetic brushes. We're going to use some other ones here in a little bit too. And then we're going to be using the mini in order to, I've already got paint on it. We're going to be using the mini in order to pull the colors together as our blending brush. So I just want to tell you guys, my paint is a little bit thick. I don't use these colors very frequently. I usually like colors, and it was all I could do not to add some blue or something in here. So I went ahead and sprayed my paper plate so that my paint's a little bit more watery, because we want to keep the paint wet long enough to run it together. So I'm also going to go ahead and just spray my two brushes that I'm going to be applying paint with. And this one is stained from Mirage, but it doesn't actually have blue paint on it. So by the way, you guys, if you have any questions or anything like that, and I do happen to miss them, I will go back after the live and answer any questions. So, by the way, the reason I want to do this before we move on to the detail work on the post is I've already got that post back there protected, but, and this side section over here. I don't want to put on wax and stuff like that so close to a spot that I don't have protected and that I still need to paint. Because the wax takes a while to dry and I could have an issue with my paint sticking. So I just don't want to overlap that area. I get paint all over me all the time. I just, honestly, you know, I had this on today to go to the doctor, and I just really didn't want to change it. So I'm taking a risk, Thelma, by all means, because I am just dangerous. And I'm surprised I don't have paint on me already, and I haven't even gotten started. So I'm sure, like, who else is like that with the paint? I'm just dangerous. So you guys, I'm going to go ahead, and I didn't spray this down. I'm going to put some water on it, but I don't want to go too far yet because I don't want to have too much water. So what I'm doing here is, if you see me, I'm just putting on my paint. I'm not actually painting and laying it out. I just want to slap this paint on here. I would probably make it, it's more equivalent to offloading your brush before you actually start. I'm just getting a little bit of coverage there, but I'm equating it to offloading your brush before you actually start smoothing the paint out and all that good stuff. And I'm doing that because I want my paint to be thick when I'm blending, and I want it to be able to move around. If I go ahead and put it all down and actually you know, smooth it out and everything, then there's going to be no paint left. I'm a thin painter. There won't be any paint left to move around to blend together. So all I'm doing is getting this paint on here. I've got a couple chunks because, like I said, my paint is pretty dry. And these colors, I don't use them very frequently, so they're more than a couple years old. I very rarely use neutrals. So now I have my brush I'm going to be blending with, as well as my paper towel roll shop towels because they're lint free, to kind of wipe my brush on. And all I'm going to do here is kind of pull my colors together. And I'm keeping my brush a certain way because I don't want to drag my colors too much together. I do want to have a highlight in the middle of this. So I'm kind of going in an X motion here. If I would go all the way across, I would end up more so smearing my colors instead of kind of bringing them together. And when I say smearing, what I mean by that is where you attempt to blend and you kind of end up with all one color. So when I'm doing this way, I'm bringing my dark over and my light over this way, but I'm not going too far into the center. So this side, because I'm at a different angle, I'm just kind of going in an X. I don't want to completely mix it up, so I just have one new color. Now I'm going to start bringing it back together, and I'm offloading my brush onto my paper towel because I want to keep the excess paint off this brush. And a lot of this is based on the feel of the paint, because if you, right now my paint is nice and smooth, wet and coming together, but I want to pay attention to the feel of it, because if it starts to drag, then I got to get that edge a little bit. But if my paint starts to drag, then I'll know it's at a point where I need to add more water. So what I'm doing right now is going across it very lightly, just kind of bringing it together in areas where I see it might not be blended super well. I want to get these edges. I'm going to be doing some dry brushing over here though, so I'm not too worried about those edges. Got this one right here that needs a little bit more paint. So now I'm just going to go across this very light, very feather light, because I'm no longer really trying to drag my paint together. I'm just trying to get rid of any like streaks or anything like that. This is a self-leveling paint, so I don't have to worry too much about that, because it is going to start to level off as it dries. But hopefully you guys can see kind of how that came together. And I'm actually going to take just a little art brush here, because I did slap some over here. And I want to kind of smooth that out just around the posts. But I'll be touching that area up. I do have a couple little fuzzies kind of in here. Well, they're not really fuzzies. They're actually a little bit of a paint chunk, just because, again, I did not stir up my paint before I started. It is older. If I was using a jar, I probably would have added water and stirred it up. And I could have added water to that and shaken it, but I didn't. So with that, I will actually use a super fine rad pad once it's dry, and just very lightly go over it. You'll see in a little bit what we're going to do with that. Very lightly go over it. That's going to take those out. It'll also take out little fuzzies and stuff like that. But that's it for, that's it for the blending. I'm going to go ahead and touch up this edge here. I can't blend on this drawer, which I also plan to do, just because I forgot to fill in the holes. So we're going to kind of move on. Like I said, I'm going to quickly go along here on the front. I just want to have this done as well. And I'm using the French linen. And by the way, I could use my round small. I just don't want to dirty it up right now, as I may need it in a minute. And I have plenty of round small brushes. I just don't want to have to get up and walk to get anything right now. So we're just gonna, this already has one coat on it, so the coverage is pretty good. Just gonna bring it in. So down here, I am gonna add a little highlight with the Sawmill Gravy, but I'm just gonna use my same brush, and this is a super easy way that you can blend as well. I'm just gonna use the same brush and do kind of a streaky, kind of little layering blend a little bit. Just to bring it kind of together, but give it a very slight shadowy highlight. It doesn't need to be the pure Sawmill Gravy, because, right up here, it's not. It's, the Sawmill, it's the French linen, so I don't want to have it a completely different color in the front. So that's it to the blending. Once that dries, I'll go over it with a super fine brush, and at that point, I will put a coat of protectant on it. So now we're gonna come over here, and here is where I'm gonna go ahead, bring you in and bring you down a little bit. Hopefully I don't whack myself in the head again with my tripod, which is totally possible. Here we go. let me bend you down a little bit more because we're going to start working on the bottom here. So what we're going to do with the Sawmill Gray, or with the Moonshine Metallics, is we are going to do the feet. I'm just going to do this one here, and we're also going to do some dry brushing with it. So I want to get a new, or just turn over this towel. So this is the Moonshine Metallics in Steel Magnolia. I've got a section already finished with this, so you guys will see that too, because we're going to age out one of these posts while we're on here. So with the Moonshine Metallics, Steel Magnolia looks gorgeous over like French linen, hurricane gray, sawmill gravy. It's a beautiful, to me it's a more subtle metallic. So what you want to do though, anytime you're using a metallic type of paint, is you want to make sure that you stir it up really good, because the metallic flakes sink into the bottom. And so you want to make sure that you get all of those mixed up really well so that that metallic comes to the top. So metallics too are kind of tricky sometimes to see on camera, so I'm sure you won't get the full effect, especially with the dry brush, but I'll try to bring you in close. And then in my final pictures, I always do close-ups as well. So you just want to stir that up really well. And I'm going to be painting out of my jar. I should really put it in a little cup or something like that, but so you can see kind of how it looks. See how it doesn't look metallic? It does in real life. It's really hard to tell on camera. I don't know why metallics don't pick up that well. So with the Moonshine Metallics, one of the tricks to not getting streaks, and normally you would want 2 coats. I'm only doing 1 because I want it to show through a little bit. I've already got some dry brushing going on these legs. So I'm going in one direction. Whoops. And that's what you want to do with the Moonshine Metallics to minimize streaking and to maximize your coverage. You just want to go in one, hopefully you want to make sure you guys can see. You just want to try to keep going in one direction. And the reason is your flakes, I'm putting it on pretty thick too. Your flakes, if you brush back, some of the flakes go this way, some of the flakes go that way, and that's where that streakiness is a lot of times comes from. So, and I could use a bigger brush, but I like to, in smaller areas, just use the appropriate size brush so that I don't get an excess of paint or anything else like that on here. We're going to spin it so you guys can see how it looks. Thanks, Wanda. I love metallics too. I just, somehow I always end up, no matter how neutral I try to keep it, please, somehow I always end up with metallics, some kind of gilding wax, something. Hopefully my head is not in the way. That's more what I'm concerned about. Let me try to stay back here, but I can't really see what I'm doing so far back here. So let's keep spinning this so you guys can kind of see. So you see this one's already done. Sorry, my head has to go down here because I really have to get down into that corner that's behind here just to make sure I have good coverage. So I know I'm covering that part up, but I've already got coverage on here so you can see how kind of that's turning out. Hey, Kathy from Tulsa. So what I want to do now, yeah, you can tell the difference a little bit, but it's not picking up the metallic. We're actually going to go ahead and dry brush the metallic. Let's see. There we go. We're going to dry brush the metallic on the post so that I can kind of tie this a little bit together. And let me see if I can bring you in a little bit closer on this post so you can really see. Can you kind of tell the difference? I don't know if you guys can see it. Let me know if you can tell the difference. It's very subtle because there's something else I've done to make it more subtle. But you've got that shine and shimmer up around here. It's almost like a glaze, but it's on the high points instead of in the recesses, which is what I wanted. So what you want to do, you take a very little bit of the Moonshine Metallics, and I want to spread this kind of up my brush a little bit further. So I'm going to go ahead and dip it again. And I'm going to take the excess, wipe it on my paper towel, spread it up my brush a little bit, but I want the excess paint to pretty well be wiped off. Because what we're going to do now is I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to dry brush this metallic over the post. I want this to be very light and subtle. I just want it on the high points. So I'm kind of just trying to be sure to keep it in that area. So I think you guys are close enough that you might be able to see it a little bit. I'm just getting around in this post here. So again, when I'm wiping this off, I'm laying it flat and I'm going up. The reason I'm doing that is because I want this to also highlight. It just makes it look a little bit more natural. So when I come down to these columns, I do have a little bit of texture on the columns, and I intentionally painted it that way. I'm just going sideways because if I go straight up and down, my brush bristles are going to get into these, the low points, and that's where my paint is going to end up. So instead, I'm going to pull you guys back now so you can see the whole thing because we've got some to do at the bottom as well. I just wanted to make sure you could get the gist of what's going on. So I'm going to quickly go around here. And, you know, I'm not trying to be really specific. I want it to be kind of random. So we're going to come down here, do the same thing on the bottom of this post. So this is where I'm bringing these metallic legs. I'm putting it a little thicker down here so I can bring that metallic up and kind of tie this all together. But it's the same process. Just put as much on as you like. And I'm just continuously going over this. And I'm using the whole side of my brush. So you see when I'm going, I'm not just doing this with the tips. I'm using the whole side of my brush. It's keeping it from sinking down in, so only the high points are getting this metallic on here. And I'm going to save these up here to do a little bit later, these top sides. But you can kind of see where that's at. Just want to get down around in here. And even though, once you see that you've got a lot of the metallic off, you can start putting more pressure on the brush and you'll get even more paint off. So now all my nice little high points, all my texture and everything in that post is highlighted. Oh, thanks, Thelma. Is highlighted with this Steel Magnolia Moonshine Metallic. So I want to even further, actually, sorry, I want a little bit more up here on my, I want a little bit more up here on my post. Now I'm going very light with it, you see, because I just dunked it to get a little bit more on here. I just dunked my brush again. So it's going to come out stronger when it's going to come out a little bit darker when I initially start. So I'm going very light, not a lot of pressure. Once I see that not as much paint is coming off, that's when I can start going a little bit more. But I want quite a bit up there, a little bit more on this high point around here. And okay, so now what I did from this point, because when you use a glaze, it spreads out. It just doesn't stay as a dry brush. And you can actually make glazes with the clear coats. If I didn't want a glaze, because I didn't want it to sink in. Otherwise, I could have used like pearlescent or, you know, anything else. I could have made this color. That's not what I want. I actually want it to be like a glaze though, but only on the high points. So what I did was not giving it a whole ton of time to dry, because some of it's going to stay a dry brush, some of it's going to reactivate and almost give it like another type of look. I've lost my paper plates. Okay, so what we're doing is we're actually going to take a little bit of satin here. This is our Satin Clear coat. You can see it looks white, but it dries clear. And I'm going to take let me find a wet brush. I'm going to take a wet brush because, again, I want it to reactivate a little bit. This is a little bit wet. I just washed it. So I'm going to swipe it on my towel down here to just get some of the water off of it. I don't want it to be soaked. Actually, let me do this. Normally I do this on my clothes, but I'm wearing a shirt that as of yet I don't think I have paint on. So just dry it off a little bit. Swipe it away. And then I'm going to take this pretty quickly after I protected it. And I'm going to go around and protect this. And what's this doing? I don't know if you can see it, but I'll try to bring you in. It's actually reactivating some of this metallic. And it's giving it almost like a shimmery look. Because it's smearing it in a little bit more. And even though I'm putting the protectant on, like regular up and down through here, it's not bringing it into the low points. So there's two reasons I'm doing this. One, I want to keep the metallic but minimize. I think I probably should have waited. Well, no, I've still got some that's staying out here. I want to keep the metallic, but I want to make it a little more subtle and shimmery so that depending on what angle you look at it from, some angles you might not see the shine, and then other angles you're really going to see the metallic. So that's, like I said, why I'm doing this. The second reason that I am doing it is because I'm going to wax these. And when I wax them, I don't want my wax to sink into, I don't know, I might end up doing this again later because I feel like I'm not getting the best coverage because I want to make sure you guys are seeing what I'm doing. And by the way, I want this to be solid at the bottom, so I'm not protecting the little foot down here. I'm just softening up the dry brushes of the metallic. That's all I'm doing. So I'm not protecting the foot yet. But the paint is super porous, so if you put Best Dang Wax on here, so see how it looks shimmery kind of all over? The satin is still a little wet, so that's part of it, but it gives it an all over more shimmery look whenever you do this. So I'll let this foot fully dry because that's a solid metallic. So I want to leave that. I want to leave that alone until, and I would say usually I like to at least wait a couple hours before I protect, sometimes overnight, just depending. But I also am putting this on here because I want to protect before I put my Best Dang Wax on. I don't want, the paint will just grab it. It's so porous, it'll grab that Best Dang Wax and I won't be able to wipe it back anywhere. It'll overshadow all these little details that I've already done. So that's why I am giving it that time to wait. So I've missed an entire section over here. I can tell by the feel of it. Because I didn't have, there we go. Okay, so now I think I've gotten the whole leg. So that's that. So the next thing we're going to do is now we're really going to give these legs some dimension, some pinstripes with the wax and all that good stuff. So for that, and I've kind of, you guys, I've been debating a little bit between black and brown because the top has inlays. And I've run it several different ways. I've done different colors on the inlays. I still have to do the last color though. And I'll put Besting Wax over that, over a clear coat, for several reasons. But actually, maybe I'll finish that part up. I don't have a live scheduled for this Friday, but I may end up scheduling one. I thought I was going to be out of town. So anyway, the point is that I want it to catch on all the texture and everything else that I've put it on. And I think that brown would go better with the top, but it does have some gray undertones, so I think I'm going to go with black. So I've got a natural bristle artist brush here that I'm going to be using. This is the Black Besting Wax. And so you guys, I've had this wax for a while. This around the edge is hard. This in the middle is super gooey. So depending on the look I'm going for, it depends on where I actually take the wax from. So right now I think I want the more gooey wax. And I'm going to start putting it in the grooves. So had I not protected, this is pretty much how this would look. This is not how this is going to look once I get to wipe it back. So let me show you. This was the more hard wax that I'm putting on right now. And I'm putting this wax on pretty thick. The gooey wax is going to go on differently. And the wax all comes gooey at first. I've just left the lid off so long that I've got it a little bit hard, but you know, in some places, which is nice because depending on what you're going for, sometimes that if I'm going for a little more shading, I kind of like that harder section sometimes. If I'm going for it thicker, that softer section is good. So now we're going to go ahead and just, not everywhere, but we're going to go ahead and, can you see all the way down here? Yes. I'm just going to go ahead and bring this wax up through some of these sections. I don't want to necessarily go all the way up and down because I want it to be more subtle in some spots. So I'm putting it on a little bit thicker, dragging it out a little bit lighter in a couple spots. Let me turn you guys so you can kind of see where I'm going with this. So I'm just lining all these out, and I don't have to be so slow. If I was just doing this and wasn't on camera, I'd do it a lot faster. I wouldn't be so purposeful, I guess, necessarily about it. So you don't have to be as slow and detailed as I'm being by any means. Okay, so once you get this wax on, you want to take just a lint-free rag here, and we're going to go through and wipe some of this back. So, you know, I'm going to tell you, a lot of times with the posts, I like to do something like this just because I feel like it gets in there a little bit better. But I did put this in pretty thick, and I want it to be just more subtle and lined out. I'll bring you guys in so you can see it a little bit better. As this wax hardens too, as it fully sets up and hardens, I've got a little extra there. As it fully sets up and hardens, it will look a little bit different. To me, it looks a little bit softer, and I actually wiped too much of that back. I didn't realize how well I could get in there. So I'm just going to put a little bit more on and soften it up some. I think I'm going to leave this section more dark right in here. So that's pretty dark. I don't know that I want it that dark, so I'm just going to lightly kind of run my rag around in there. And then for this, most of this I want to stay in the grooves. So I'm just going to run my rag kind of up and down the post. Like up in this section here, hopefully you guys can see right there. It's a little bit darker than I want it, so just get that rag in there a little bit and buff that back some. So if you want this wax to look really, really shiny, actually after it's completely set up, you can go in and buff it back. Usually about 15, 20 minutes or so for this. It just kind of depends. If you're going to protect over it and use a brush though, you're going to want to wait days. Usually for it to completely dry so that, oh, thanks Dixie Belle. You want to wait for it to completely dry so that it doesn't just end up smearing. Because if it's not all the way dry and I go over this with a brush protectant, it is going to, it's just going to smear. It's going to pull the black everywhere and you're not going to be able to buff it back or really get it out easily. So definitely if you're going to protect with the brush, you want to wait for like 72 hours. I do like my wax to be my last step. I used to protect over it, but the wax is a protectant in itself, so that's not really, it's not really necessary. So you can see the difference, like how much dimension this gives it over this. And if you watched the other night how I painted this, I already painted shading into these indents. So now we're going to go ahead and I am going to do some metallic stripes on the side. And we've got about 10 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and get those started. I haven't had this protected for a super long time, a few hours, and I didn't put a fan on it. So I kind of hate to put tape on it yet, but I'll just go back and fix it if anything bad happens. Usually I like to wait overnight, though, before I put tape on. But we're going to do Moonshine Metallic Stripes. Oh, thanks, Tammy. So for the Moonshine Metallic Stripes, actually, let me see if I have my measuring tape. Here we go. So normally I don't measure, but in this case, I kind of want to see where my stripes are going to fall. And I actually didn't think we were going to get to this part. So I didn't, usually I have it prepped out, but I didn't today. So let's see. That's about 13, so 7.5 is like right, whoops, not 7.5, 6.5. Clearly my math is not that great today. So this, just so you guys know, my measuring still isn't going to be like close enough is good for me. And the reason I'm going to start in the middle is because wherever I come out on the sides, normally I mark this with a... well, let's see. Where's that brush I used for the Moonshine Metallics? Here's what we're going to do. This might not be a really good idea. This is not what I normally do, but improvise. I'm just going to mark that center point. Well, that was kind of dumb, actually, because now, no matter what, because, well, not bad. This is why you protect before you... See, I didn't plan this far ahead. This is why you protect before you do something. Because if you do something like I just did and you've protected, look, you can wipe it right off. That's why I protect. If that would have been put on chalk mineral paint, I would not have been able to wipe it off. Because it would have sunk right into the paint. The paint would have grabbed it and it would have been over. So... let's see, my tape is about 1 inch wide, so I'm going to come out. So I do want to start in the center because I don't have, yeah, because that's 13 stripe, yeah. So I do need to start in the center so I can basically come out with a half a stripe on either side. So let me see if I can find my little marking pen. So at least I can, here we go. So normally what I use to mark is a watercolor pencil because you can draw all over your piece. As soon as water hits this, it's going to dissipate, especially if it's over. So we're going 6.5 in, which is right at the edge of this thing right here. It's not exact, but there we go. So now what we're going to do, let me remeasure that because I feel like I just, because we're at 6.5 isn't quite the center. Actually though, it is the center. Okay. So an extra 1/8 there. So what I want to do is I'm going to put down a guide tape. And my guide tape, this side is actually, this part is, if I'm starting the very stripe in the center, this part is actually going to be covered with the Moonshine Metallic, so I could have just left that guide marker I had. So let me see. I want my stripes to be straight, so that's a solid. Let's see. Hold on, give me just a sec. I've got to think right quick. Try extra. Okay, that'll work. So what I'm going to do is, first I'm going to measure to make sure that I'm straight. Normally, if I wasn't live, honestly, I would have just run my tape over and then adjusted it. But since I'm live, let me show you the right way to do it. That's 6 3/4 and 6. Yeah, so this is straight. So we're going to go ahead and just put this up and down to match. We're going to use this as our guide, and we're going to put it up and down here to match. I might go a couple minutes over, you guys. We're going to get at least one stripe done. I might just probably tape off this side. And like I said, I do actually normally adjust my stripes. I don't usually measure out that way. I'm just not that precise. So I've got a couple extras here. Let's see. Well, let's see. That's not quite what I wanted to happen here, but that's okay. So normally I would pull these up because I figured this wrong, and I really wanted to end in a metallic, but the way this is working, my corner is actually not going to be a metallic. And I hate to say this, but I do want to go back and fix it because I want those edges to be a metallic. So I'm just going to go back. It's an easy fix. We'll be ready to paint these stripes on really quick. So just make sure we're up and down with our guide tape. By the way, make sure the tape you want to actually stick is pressed down well so that you don't get any bleed through. And I personally do use frog tape because I find it the best to do a clean release without having to rub it on your clothes or anything else, as well as the best when it comes to bleed through. So I'm going to move our guide strips over here. We're going to take this piece of tape off because that's a good piece. We're going to lay that straight up and down there. Now, sometimes if I'm just a tiny bit off, because all your posts are not always straight, so sometimes if I'm just a tiny bit off, I will just readjust. And it's not really a big deal because it's such a subtle changeover that your eye still lets you see them as straight. And when I say a tiny bit, we're talking like in a 1/16 of an inch or something like that. I could get over here, be straight all the way across and not be straight because this post isn't straight. So I'm just making sure that I am rubbed down well there. And then I'm also going to tape off this corner part because I do not want these stripes to, I don't always tape that off. A lot of times I do it by hand, but because I'm live, I'm always not as careful. So it's just probably best if I tape it off here. That'll give me a nice straight line on the edge. So we're just going to go ahead and do these stripes. So my metallics have been sitting for a second. So I'm going to go ahead and just shake them up again. Actually, I'm going to stir them up a little bit again. Just make sure I get all the good shiny stuff to the top. All right, and then we're coming up on time, and sometimes this takes a couple coats, so let me find. I'm going to wet my brush down a little bit because I kind of let the paint get a little dry on there. And you guys, never ever throw your brushes away. If you let paint dry on your brushes, clean as a whistle is amazing for taking that out. I mean, it's a miracle worker. I've never seen anything quite that good. So we are going to one direction down. So I offload my brush a little bit and then just go down with it. I try to make as few passes as possible. That was a bit much, but hold on. There we go. Very light. Just one direction though. And this will show up really nicely if you do 2 to 3 coats. I'm going to do 1 coat while we're live here and take it off. I don't know. I might do more coats, or I might want it to be more subtle like this. So the Moonshine Metallics also, they don't require a protectant over it, but I do like to protect over them. So I will do satin over this whole thing. Even though it's already got 1 coat of satin on it, I will put satin over it again before I put the wax on. So let's go ahead. I'm going to leave that piece on, but we're going to take this off slowly, so hopefully I don't damage anything since it's so new. And you can see how those stripes turn out. If you want to put pinstripes down the outside edges of them, you can do that too. You just leave a little extra space when you're taping off. And then you put another piece of tape down the center here, and you can make your outside pinstripes. Like if you wanted to do like another color metallic around there, or if you wanted to do like a darker gray or something like that. But that's it. So I'm going to do stuff over these also. I don't know if I'll do this Friday or not, but I'm fighting the urge. I'm trying to keep it neutral at least, even though I'm going with extra stuff, but I want to put flowers all over it. And some lettering, so French script lettering specifically. But that's it. Oh, thanks, Wanda. So I'm leaving this piece on here because, of course, I'm going to go all the way across with these stripes. But so we had a lot of topics tonight. We did a little bit of blending, and look, see, I don't have this protected, and I actually dropped some of that metallic on here. I'm going to try to wipe it back, but I'm going to do some stuff on here, so hopefully I can get it wiped back enough because it's not protected. So I'm wiping back some of my paint, so it kind of, look at that. See how my paint came off? When I wiped that up there, nothing happened because it was protected. But, so I'm going to get some more stuff done on this, though, and hopefully I'll have final pictures of a bunch of stuff that we worked on over the last week or so on my page. Thank you guys so much for hanging out tonight. I hope you guys have a great week, and you guys take care. Have a great night. Thanks.